Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a philosophy that is absolutely going to dismantle the exhausting myth of traditional positivity. You know the pressure I'm talking about, right? The constant need to always be happy and always be crushing it. Well, we're throwing that out the window. Instead, we're going to use Mark Manson's wildly popular framework from his work on the subtle art of letting go of the things that don't matter to uncover what's called the essential philosophy of meaningful struggle.
Okay, let's dive into this. What if the very act of trying to be happy is exactly what's making us miserable? It's kind of the ultimate paradox of our modern culture. We live in a society deeply obsessed with constant positivity. We're told directly and indirectly that if we aren't happy, well, something must be fundamentally wrong with us. But honestly, look at where that leaves us. We're burnt out, we're stressed, and we feel completely inadequate. What Manson's framework suggests is that this very pursuit, this desperate scramble for a friction-free, perfectly happy life, is the exact mechanism that is causing your misery.
We're constantly sold this shiny, traditional goal, the endless treadmill of perfect happiness, elite status, and social media validation. We spend so much emotional currency chasing those illusions, but reality is a completely different landscape. Reality actually defaults to suffering, limitation, and struggle. And here's the kicker. These aren't signs of failure. They are simply the default conditions of human existence. When we try to outrun that reality, when we avoid pain at literally all costs, we don't actually escape it. We just end up creating a much deeper, way more complex layer of suffering for ourselves.
Now, what's really interesting about this concept is that there's a fascinating psychological trap for this exact phenomenon, the feedback loop from hell. It's a vicious cycle where the very act of avoiding or fighting your negative emotions actually creates unnecessary compounding suffering. Trying not to feel bad literally guarantees that you are going to feel worse. It is basically the mental equivalent of struggling in quicksand. The more you thrash around trying to escape that negative feeling, the deeper you sink right into it.
Let's walk through how this spirals, because it's a feeling most of us know way too well. Step 1, you feel anxious about an upcoming presentation. Okay, totally normal. But then, step 2 kicks in. You feel bad about being anxious. You start telling yourself, I shouldn't be nervous, what is wrong with me? And suddenly, bam, step 3, you are now experiencing intense anxiety about the fact that you have anxiety. Your brain is just spiraling entirely out of control. But here is the secret to breaking that loop. Just breathe. The only way out of this trap is radical acceptance. You literally just have to look at that initial anxiety and say, okay, I feel anxious right now, and you know what? That's fine. Acceptance stops the loop dead in its tracks.
Now, here is a jarring thought for you. You are not special. I know, it completely goes against literally everything we've been told since kindergarten. But stick with me, because this isn't an insult at all. It is actually a massive, game-changing paradigm shift designed to completely reset your expectations about your place in the world.
Think about it. Society constantly hands us this incredibly heavy crown of expectations, telling us we're all extraordinary, we're all destined for greatness, and that we absolutely deserve special treatment. But constantly holding yourself to the standard of being an exceptional, world-changing human is incredibly exhausting. And honestly, it inevitably leads to crushing disappointment. The truly liberating reality here is that most of us, most of the time, are wonderfully, perfectly ordinary. And accepting our ordinary nature, it frees us. It strips away all that exhausting pressure and allows us to pursue honest, realistic growth instead of just endlessly chasing a delusion.
And that brings us to a major twist in the narrative. If life is always going to contain suffering and limitations, well then what exactly is happiness? The core insight here is that happiness actually comes from solving meaningful problems. Look, life is always going to throw challenges at you. There is no magical future out there where you suddenly have zero problems. So the goal of life isn't to somehow eliminate problems. The goal is to deliberately choose good problems to solve.
I want to pause right here for a second. Seriously, ask yourself, which problems are you actually willing to face? Are you willing to face the problems of raising a child? The problems of starting a brand new business? What about the problems of maintaining a deeply honest relationship? Because whatever you choose, it's going to require struggle. You just have to pick the struggle that feels profoundly worth it to you.
Let's move to our next core concept and see how this builds. Building a toolkit for choosing those right struggles really comes down to your underlying values. Healthy values, things like honesty, learning, responsibility, and growth, they're deeply grounded in reality because you actually control them. Toxic values, on the other hand, rely entirely on external forces. Chasing fame, seeking approval, or having a desperate need to be right all the time, which, let's be honest, is exhausting for everyone around you, will literally only leave you miserable. Orienting your life around good, Internal values naturally helps you make better decisions and build much stronger, far more resilient relationships.
So, the crucial point is this. It all leads to absolute ownership. You are always responsible for your choices. Now, to be clear, you might not be responsible for the terrible things that happen to you. You don't control the economy, you don't control the weather, and you certainly don't control how other people act. But you always control your response to those events. True personal power is unlocked the exact moment we stop blaming the world for our circumstances and take full ownership of how we react to them.
And look, in taking that ownership, you are going to make mistakes. A lot of them, actually. But failure is one of life's greatest teachers. We have this really deep-seated fear of failing, but just look at any successful innovator or artist. Think about a brilliant author's first awful draft, or a scientist's hundreds of completely botched experiments. Their early path is almost always a highlight reel of bad ideas, rejections, and brutal setbacks. Growth just doesn't happen when things are easy. Growth only happens when we face our failures head-on and actually learn from them, instead of desperately trying to avoid them.
Another massive trap we fall into is spreading ourselves way too thin, right? Trying to be everything to everyone out of this fear of missing out or just fear of disappointing people. But life becomes instantly better when you embrace the power of rejection, saying no to toxic relationships, unnecessary commitments, and those endless digital distractions. That is not selfish, it's a vital defense mechanism. Setting boundaries protects your incredibly limited energy so that you finally have the bandwidth to say yes to the very few things that truly matter.
Now, setting those boundaries requires letting go of the need to know how everything is going to turn out. Personal growth truly begins when we accept uncertainty. Just think about how utterly exhausting it is to constantly demand absolute certainty about your future, your career trajectory, or your relationships. It's a fool's errand, because certainty simply doesn't exist. Becoming comfortable with not having all the answers, just really embracing the unknown, is genuinely one of the most liberating things you can possibly do for your mind.
We are bringing it all together today with the ultimate reality check. It's something we spend our whole lives ignoring, but confronting it is absolutely the key to this entire philosophy, the reality of mortality. Recognizing that our time here is finite isn't meant to be morbid at all. It's actually meant to be the ultimate filter for how we choose to live.
And this brilliantly illustrates what happens when we use our mortality as a filter. Suddenly, our incredibly limited time becomes immensely valuable. Those petty grievances you've been holding on to, they fade away. Deep relationships actually start to matter. Suddenly, searching for real meaning becomes infinitely more important than just chasing fleeting momentary pleasure. Remembering our mortality forces us to ruthlessly cut out the superficial distractions and start living with absolute, unapologetic intention.
I want to leave you with this final, powerful thought. The key to a better life isn't caring about more things. It's caring about fewer things and caring deeply about the things that truly matter. So take a hard look at where your energy is going today. Are you caring about the right things or just the shiny ones? Choose your struggles wisely. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.